All right, I'll call the special meeting for the West Richland City Council for June 17th, 2024 to order at 5:30. And before we get started, I'll ask Stephanie to read the hybrid meeting ground rules and then call the roll.
Tonight's meeting will be held in person with a virtual meeting component. If you are participating virtually, please make sure the name shown at the bottom of your video view is the name you would like the mayor to use. You can change this by right-clicking on the three dots in the upper corner of your video view and clicking Rename. Audience members present in the council chambers will be called upon first during public comment periods. Those participating remotely should virtually raise your hand if you wish to speak. To virtually raise your hand, click on Participants and then click on Raise Hand. If you are participating by phone only, press *9 to raise your hand. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right, roll call. Brent Gary,
Here.
Richard Bloom,
Here.
Fred Brink,
Fred Brink is here attending virtually.
thank you. David Fetto,
Here.
Nate Hayes,
Here.
Kate Moran,
Kate Moran, present, virtual as well.
John Smart.
Here.
Joker's on vacation this week.
Council, we have the consent agenda before you this evening, which consists of ordinance 1224, amending West Richland Municipal Code, chapter 9.06. Resolution 4324, setting a public hearing for a utility easement vacation number 0002-2024. Motion to award the North Lake East Lake roadway repairs project. Motion to authorize West Richland Chief of Police to sign an agreement for the Washington Auto Theft Program Authority grant. And is there anyone from the audience who'd like to speak to this consent agenda this evening? In-house here? I see no one in-house. Virtually, *9 or raise your virtual hand if you would like to make comment to the consent agenda. I do not see any participants this evening virtually other than our two council members. Stephanie, do you? Council, may I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, council. And we're moving on to ordinance resolution, motions and public hearings. Item 8A is an ordinance setting interim development regulations regarding multifamily housing. And we'll ask Community Development Director Eric Mendenhall to provide a staff report this evening. Eric?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and residents of the city of West Richland. Over the past several years, the city has seen significant growth and new multifamily developments like never before. Some of these multifamily developments have been designed with thought and provided great examples of what is desired for the community. Others appear to have had the developer's bottom line at their core and focus, leaving much to be desired aesthetically. I have personally received negative feedback by several individuals on these developments, one of them another developer in the community. I have been made aware of a multifamily development, which will likely build more multifamily units that lack desired design and detail. This development is proposed next to a significant single-family development and could have the potential to negatively impact home values of that development. The proposal before you this evening is an interim development regulation that will immediately establish design standards for multifamily development. Additionally, it will require staff to take these standards through a public review process that will allow staff, which would allow the public, which includes the development community, to participate and provide feedback and opportunity to modify and right-size the design standards for the community. Once they have been properly vetted, the design standards for multifamily will come back to the council for review and approval. While this is an interim development regulation or IDR, the IDR does not prohibit future multifamily development, but establishes immediate standards to serve as a stopgap over the next few months, while allowing time for the community, staff, planning commission, and council to review these standards and to allow the public process and input. The intent is to have these completed within the required 6 months time allocated by state law. You will see at your next council meeting on July 16th, findings of fact for the IDR for council approval. The planning commission will then begin their discussions and review at their next August meeting.
Thank you, Eric. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this agenda item this evening? And if so, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, sir. And we'll have, you'll come on up to the microphone here, sir. And we'll have 3 minutes to make your comments. And name and address, please.
My name is Harold Alexander, 7631 West Van Giesen, West Richland. And I was drafted in the military in 1963, and I was housed in barracks, military barracks, rows of them. And those apartments along Van Giesen there reminds me very much of those military barracks that I was housed in '63. And I think West Richland could do better. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience like to speak to the agenda item?
Eric Alexander. I reside at 2090 Kingston Road in Richland. Over the last 15 years, my father and I and a couple other folks have had the opportunity to provide 200 plus single family residence lots in West Richland in the north of Paradise area. In each of those subdivisions, we required the builders to meet some certain architectural control standard methods, and they were in excess of course, the building code. And we did that for not just to be hard on the builders, but so that neighbors and the builders amongst themselves would know what the person next to them was building. Nothing rigid or stringent, but just some certain minimums that would create some architectural interest for the neighborhoods. So we'd like to see something similar done by the city for their multifamily construction that is going to happen in the near future. We're currently under construction on a plat that immediately overlooks some of the multifamily that's proposed to be constructed in this next year. And so those are going to be view lots, and we'd like to have some architectural interest in the multifamily stuff that's happening for these fairly expensive homes that are going to be unimpeded view lots and looking down on this. I know the city's also currently in the process of widening Van Giesen, and that corridor will create more traffic through the city, and certainly I would like to see a different look to the city. You can't change what's already there, but you can affect what the future looks like. And one of the two major corridors in the city, of course, they're on Van Giesen. So I'm in support of the resolution.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience like to comment to this agenda item this evening? I see no one else in house. Virtually, *9 or raise your virtual hand to be recognized. If you would like to comment on this agenda item. I see no one this evening. Stephanie, do you? Okay, very good, thank you. Council, may I have a motion, please? Councilman Bloom is scrolling backwards.
I move to adopt ordinance 13-24 interim development regulation, which establishes design standards for multifamily development and amends the West Richland Municipal Code.
I second.
Second, council, are any previous questions you have of staff that weren't answered in the staff report? Councilmember Bloom.
Yes, looking over what was in the packet, it's not clear what really we're aiming at. I mean, one thing that popped in my mind was the outlawing of T111 siding. But which is common in a lot of our other, so I recognize that this will go through some scrubbing. Now, originally I was opposed to the commercial standard lot. I'm not opposed to this from the standpoint that most developments do set up some design standards for their developments. And, you know, with this being multiple, I mean, you've written this loosely for duplexes as well as row houses or multifamily. So I'm not opposed to this, but I do suggest that when we go through, we look at the requirements applicable to most subdivisions. I mean, and I would hate for this to require what I would call excessive cost per unit. And that's one of the, you know, the new energy codes will drive the unit prices up obscenely anyway. But I do want to express my concern with, you know, these are, you know, unfortunately starter homes or future rentals. I still, as I've said in the past, I would like us to get a rental policy for the city because, I mean, Richland has done something similar, but not that aspect. And I think rental property is a business and we should manage it as a business in the city. So thank you.
Anyone else this evening? Sure. Councilmember Smart?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that it's clearly stated that this is for multifamily construction, as it's stated in the proposal. I, like Councilmember Bloom, have been opposed to far-reaching standards like this that are broadly applied to construction that go beyond, you know, International Building Code. However, I think that reasonably applied, some of the ideas in this document make sense to me. Some of them don't, and some of them are written with words like encourage or discourage the use of materials and so forth. There's a lot of work to be done here to make this real. So I wanted to point out that I am, you know, in favor of working through this. I'm a little bit, I guess, confused or unsure how these will be applied in the immediate and near future to, you know, the developments you've talked about or maybe coming down the pike. How are you suggesting that those will happen after the September 12th? Well, let's see. No, I take it back. The October 15th second reading, is that, or are these developments you're talking about applying these to going to happen before we're finished reviewing all of these rules and suggestions?
So an interim development regulation takes effect immediately. So the idea is that this is a stopgap design standard that we're going to put out that will be applied immediately to duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and above. I concur that these standards are probably a little higher than what the community would tolerate. And so we'll come down off of those as we go through the public process and as we have some discussions with planning commissioners. I intend to invite the building community as well to get their feedback. And right size, like I said, these design standards. And right size to one person might not be the same to another, of course. But the intent is that tomorrow, if someone comes in with a development, that they would have to meet these standards. If they want to wait for the process to go through completely and council adopts the final product, they can wait for that as well. So it's up to them and their timing as far as when they want to be vested, if they want to be vested to which set of rules.
Well, let me ask on the myriad of paragraphs and bullet points that are loosely worded. I would say that they're not absolute. How will those be determined for applicants who want to, begin construction tomorrow or 2 weeks from now? Or whatever, in near term, before we're finished with this process, are we assuring them that those decisions that may be controversial in their minds are given the benefit of some panel discussion, or is it just you or one of your staff who will be saying, no, this is what we think it should be?
When it says encourage, that's like saying it may or right, or it should. So that's why those are there. It's intended to be that way. Where it says it must or it shall, then that's the hard, fast rule. So there's some encouragement in there, trying to encourage them to do some things, and it's intended to be that way. So there is some room there for some discussions, but that's a lot of why these are established, is to have some discussions with the design team as they're working through the process.
Yeah, and I guess I'm curious to hear more of a definition of who has the power to, or who will be given the power to make those decisions. I guess I'm having a little bit of a hard time with, like, for example, there's one here that says pedestrian entrances. The main pedestrian entrance shall generally face, and then it goes on. And it's like, well, I couldn't think of a more wishy-washy way to put that. It either must or it should, or it generally should, but it says shall, and then generally, it's open to a lot of interpretation, obviously. And I get that, because this is design. This is aesthetic design, mostly functional design. Well, it's not structural design mostly. So I'm in the terms of load bearing structure, right? So I guess what I don't want to see, in my opinion, is for one person or two people in your department, being able to declare this is how it shall be when there's maybe a viable argument from the developer that says, well, I think differently. I want to make sure that there's an option to call the planning commission in, or bring it before council or something like that. What I don't want to see is these loose guidelines dictated by one or two people, no matter who those one or two people are, because I think that's not the way our government should work. And until we actually decide as a council that something is definitive, then that's when we give you and your department the power to say this is, how it needs to be, because this is what council has said. So right now it's just very loose, and that's concerning to me. So I'm okay with it, assuming I know you, Eric, and mayor and council and the city. I want some assurance that those type of things that may crop up in the next 6 months, or whatever it is, 5 months, are vetted with us as council, and not just dictated by one or two people, if it makes sense.
And just to clarify, the process is already established through the design review, that if the developer designer doesn't like the outcome through staff, they can appeal it to the planning commission, and then planning commission will make the decision. So that's already established. That will continue on even with these. So it's not just giving one individual all power over it. So it's already established that way.
Okay, that's great to have the assurance and to make that publicly stated. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Moran, you have your hand raised virtually. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say that I really appreciate all of the work that our staff has put in, especially since it shows that, we're really listening to the community, because somebody has come in and said, hey, this doesn't seem right. And while I can't recall exactly passing by, I'm sure that I would agree with Mr. Alexander, because I've seen a lot of barracks housings, and it is not pleasant to pass by all the time. But I appreciate that we're making this flexible, and we do have the means for folks to, if they don't agree with what staff has said is or is not acceptable, that they can have the option to go to the planning commission. And I really like that we're putting in things like, if we look at page 65 out of 100, I'm sorry, in our packet, it's page 67. It's 1.1.10 for architectural details. I really like that we're putting in things like this where it's choose 4 points out of the below as architectural details, as points of interest. So I appreciate that we're doing things like this, trying to make sure that we're being pedestrian friendly, because just like Councilmember Smart had said, a lot of these are starter homes and maybe not everybody has a vehicle, so they will be likely pedestrians, at least for some part. So I appreciate it. I like the way it's written, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the decisions are going to be for the more permanent, can't think of the word, not regulations, but what the more permanent document is going to look like. So I just want to say thank you. Looks good. And yeah, let's keep going with this.
Thank you, Councilmember Moran. Councilmember Breek, do you have any comments on that item this evening? I know that you're on a phone, maybe don't have a hand available. Apparently not. Oh, there he is.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just one or two comments. Essentially, they're along the lines of Councilmember Moran's comments. I am encouraged by the fact that Mr. Mendenhall and his staff have put together these interim guidelines. I think that the city definitely needs them. Some of the construction which has taken place, particularly along Van Giesen, is not within my vision of the city, and I am certain it is not within the vision of many citizens, about a dozen or so that I have had the opportunity to talk to in the course of the last several months. So having specific design standards is a good step in the right direction. And also, I am encouraged by the fact that these will be flexible. We can see how things go in the next several months. Planning Commission and Council can take additional input to finally refine these. So I support this measure that's being considered right now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brink. Appreciate it. Okay. Seeing no one else, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, council. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and move on to our opportunity for public comment. And with the upcoming advisory vote in August, I'd like to ask our city attorney, Jessica Foltz, to provide an additional information regarding speaking during council meetings about the cannabis topic. Jessica?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as we discussed at the last council meeting, state law does prohibit the use of public facilities to support or oppose ballot issues or candidates, which is not at issue tonight. And we recently, actually today, I got a copy of the sample ballot, and our advisory vote is included in that as anticipated. Now that that issue has been on the ballot, I advised at the last council meeting that persons making statements promoting or opposing the ballot measure could be in violation of the law, but I was waiting for some clarification from the Public Disclosure Commission, who enforces that section of the RCW. I did receive an email response from them to my question. I sent that to council this afternoon. And they did confirm that that law does apply to citizen comment during public meetings. As we are aware, that's a limited public forum for First Amendment purposes. We are allowed to impose viewpoint neutral regulations that are reasonable in light of the purpose. With that said, the PDC has made pretty clear that that is prohibited at this time until this vote happens. And I would ask Mr. Mayor to ask the citizens to not discuss the topic of the advisory vote. The law is not entirely clear about what promoting or opposing entails, but there are enforcement decisions from the PDC where people are not specifically saying, please vote for this or please vote against this. And there have been complaints made and some complaints founded. So at this time, my advice to the mayor would be to advise the citizens that we should avoid that topic and to remind them of that if someone forgets. There is a posting on the podium as well containing that language.
Thank you, Jessica. And so there is a reminder on the podium. And then also, Jessica, would you please make note of what potential violation a council member may have that would relieve the city of any liability, and the personal liabilities of such violation of the PDC would be on the onus of the council member himself?
Certainly. So PDC penalties vary greatly. Sometimes there's just a reprimand, a letter of reminder. But it looked to me from looking in the enforcement decisions that more blatant violations of the law or continued violations, there can be fees imposed. Penalties can range up to fines of $10,000 or prosecution by the Attorney General's office. And again, although we are asking citizens not to speak on this issue, they are not the ones subject to the PDC. It's the city for allowing the use of the facility to be used for promotion or opposition, and or individual council members if they were to use the facility by making comments that were prohibited.
Thank you very much for the clarification. We're just trying to keep the city out of any trouble with PDC or any council member as well. So thank you for digging into that. I appreciate that, Jessica. So with that, if anybody would like to provide comments this evening, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes, as well as the council will not respond to any questions during the comment period.
Dan Ritchie, 508 Austin Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've had some health issues recently, and so I wasn't able to attend the June 4th meeting. So I did go on and watch it virtually, which, by the way, it's posted on YouTube as a June 6th meeting. So that'll need to be revised. Anyway, when I was on there, I could not believe what I was hearing. I absolutely could not believe what I was hearing. It smacked of violating my First Amendment rights, quite frankly. And so for that reason, Mayor, I sent you the email, asking questions and asking for clarification on that, which you did provide today. So I do appreciate that clarification. That said, I've also reached out to the ACLU and the SPLC, and so we'll see what they have to say about that as well. I understand the city is in a tight spot with regards to the PDC. Determination's been made. We've been told what we're supposed to do. And so therefore we need to try and honor that until we know differently. Well, I'm going to see if I can find out differently. We'll see how that goes. Okay, now that said, I did want to encourage everyone listening and everyone here to go out to the West Richland Citizens Group website, wrcg.org. And you will find on that website where we've tried to put out a lot of clarifying information on different things. And so then, and we intend to do that, not just for current issues, but ongoing issues, and such that then we can help the citizens of West Richland to come up to speed or stay up to speed with exactly what's going on. So I encourage you to go out there and take a look at that. And if there's any comments or anything like that, they would be welcome. And there's also opportunities to send emails and others. So please utilize that website. There's some good fact sheets out there, and I think you might find those of value. Also want to mention another website. It's called johnny'sambassadors.org. And if you've never gone to that website, I wholeheartedly encourage you to do that, because it has some very poignant facts about a mother and the demise of her son based on marijuana in their town. So I encourage you to go out there and take a look at that. I also want to make sure that everybody knows that we've had a couple of West Richland City Council meetings canceled, and we only have one meeting after this, only one meeting left before August 6th. Let that sink in for just a minute. We've got one of the most contentious topics that this city's ever faced, in my opinion, and yet we're not going to be able to speak because of the PLC and because of the fact that we're simply not having council meetings. that just smells wrong. That smells way wrong. And I don't think that that's the light or the brush with which this council wants to be painted. Okay, so I encourage you to think about that and what we can do about that.
Richie, time's up today.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else this evening?
Steve Smet, 1788 Ironwood Avenue. Back in the early 1970s, growing up in Spokane, Washington, there was a concert come to town by the band Black Sabbath. So at the time, and of course, at 15 years old, we were like, this is great. This is going to be awesome. So at the time, they had a signature song titled Sweet Leaf. And the song was about marijuana. And it was a weird song then. It's a weird song now. On the city council at the time was a person named Margaret Leonard. And Margaret Leonard stood up and said, Black Sabbath is not going to play that song. And if they don't agree to my terms, they're not going to come to Spokane. That opened a firestorm. And there's a lot of criticism, press coverage. It was big news in Spokane at the time, I think in 73. So for me and for my peer group, we thought Margaret Leonard was old fashioned, stodgy, didn't like young people. That was our take on it. So, but in spite of all the criticism, in spite of all the pressure that she went under and all the press coverage, she stood her ground and she prevailed. And she forced Black Sabbath to agree to not play the song Sweet Leaf. And they came to town, they started their concert. Ozzy Osbourne got up there, in Ozzy Osbourne style, threw out some inappropriate hand gestures and some inappropriate words directed to Margaret Leonard by name. And everybody clapped and cheered. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful, They did the concert, they didn't do the song. Life went on. About a week later, everybody pretty much forgot about it. It was old news. So as time went on, I graduated high school, served in the Coast Guard for 4 years, started a family, and things changed, of course, when you grow up and you become an adult. I started really listening to what our elected leaders were saying and watching what they were doing. And every now and then that name, Margaret Leonard, would come up because of what she did. And I learned as growing up that the reason that she did what she did was because she wasn't old-fashioned, stodgy, and didn't care about kids. She did this tangible thing because she cared deeply about the kids, about the young people of Spokane, Washington. That's why she did what she did. And that's really what I remember her for. 51 years down the road, I'm just sharing this little bit of information with you, sharing this name, Margaret Leonard, but just this hope that in 2024, West Richland, there will be some young people, maybe their parents. As time goes on, they'll remember your name, whether you're still alive or whether you passed on like Margaret Leonard. And they'll remember what you did. And most importantly, they'll remember why you did it. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else, Stephen?
My name is Kelly Smart and a resident of West Richland. I find it concerning that our state has passed a law that seems to prohibit citizens from speaking about our concerns and opinions regarding relevant community topics at public facilities. This restriction seems to contradict the Bill of Rights, which states Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. People in the United States have a right to petition the government without restriction for redress of grievances. Council has established the normal and regular citizen time for citizen to comment on items not on the agenda. Anyone should be able to attend and speak their voice here. It seems unconstitutional to prevent that. And I was going to go on, but because of the rule, I will not petition my government for this one time. But I will end with, we expect council to protect, preserve, and fight for our families and our community. And that is what we elected you to do.
Anyone else, Stephen?
My name is David Cole. I live at 1710 Ironwood Avenue, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak here. 3 different times in my life, I raised my right hand. I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I've never unsworn that oath, never will. I have a problem with the idea that people that are opposed to this, that there would be an attempt to, to muzzle this or to have a chilling effect on the speech on this. If the idea is that we're concerned with citizens may influence the outcome of this, that's exactly what we're trying to do. That's exactly what citizen input is intended to do. That input is
You
intended.
are speaking to the advisory vote, so please be careful with that.
Okay. But with respect to people speaking here at city council meeting, citizens intend to influence the outcome of council decisions. They want to do it appropriately. They want to do it respectfully, but they definitely intend to influence the outcome. And that's our intent. Thank you.
Else?
My name is Cindy Rentz. I live at 4100 South Lake Court. I just want to applaud this council for putting in these design development. We called them something different in Richland, but what we talked about earlier, because you really talked to your vision and you talked about having an inviting community. I would just encourage this council to keep that in mind as you're going forward with future issues that come before you, to remember your vision statement and that it does say a safe, inviting community. And I think that's something that would be helpful to remember. Thank you.
Anyone else this evening? Seeing no one else in the house, if anybody would like to make public comment virtually, we have *9 or your virtual hand to be recognized. I see no one virtually. Stephanie, do you?
I do not.
Very good. Well, that concludes our special meeting this evening, so I will adjourn it at 6:07. Thank you.